but still, they're not tricking them out in such a way that it would be so much noise that like it would be a car without a muffler, right?
Just give them time to figure that out.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
I was in a Tesla that was broadcasting classic rock out to the outside.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's classic. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I don't know that it was appreciated by all.
Okay.
Just holding it for a second. It looks like Councilmember Nutting's getting on, and then we can begin. Here he comes. All right. Chair, are we ready to go? Okay. I hereby call the Des Moines City Council meeting for Thursday, May 12th to order. And with that, I turn the floor over to Councilmember Oxiger for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Oxiger. Let the record reflect that all 7 members of the council are present. Just quick announcement. As we all know, we heard from the governor that he is lifting the ban on in-person council meetings that don't have a virtual option as of June 1st. As a result, it is in my intention to begin holding in-person council meetings in the council chambers, starting our first meeting in June, which will be June 9th. Staff will be continually closely watching the situation, and I will keep the council informed of any changes. With that, as Deputy City Clerk, is there any correspondence?
No correspondence, Mayor, but we do have written comments from the following people.
Okay.
Jamie Wagner, follow-up animal control questions. Charlie Retz, sports. Ryan Jensen, please fix things. Aram Han, Des Moines Marino Hotel, and Doreen Harper, Little League playoffs. And we did have somebody sign up for public comment, but she's not here, and that was Liz Taylor, Animal Control Officer. And that's all the public comment.
All right, with that, thank you. We will move on to the city manager report, and Michael, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone. Couple of things today. First, I want to start with a legislative update from our legislative advocate, Anthony Hemstad. I'll just kind of review what's occurred over the past session and what we can look forward to in both some of the electoral issues that are starting to formulate. So with that, I'll ask Anthony to start.
Yeah, very good, Michael. Thank you, and good seeing all of you in a virtual session here. And Mary Mahoney and others, look forward to actually doing this in person here in future months as well. Now I will, through the wonders of okay, can you see?
Yes, we can.
PowerPoint? You can? Okay, good. Gosh, I love Zoom. Okay, so tonight we're going to just quickly run through what happened in this in the past legislative session and look forward to the remainder of this year and starting 2023. Hard to believe that session ended already 2 months ago, but it's a short session, very, very active session, and a lot happened for a short session. In that normally there's much less action, but with the robust budget surplus through the all the federal funds that had come in, and also a stronger than expected economy, this was a very, very active session, and as we'll walk through, it was very successful for Des Moines, but much of that, of course, was thanks to just the fantastic legislative delegation in the 33rd and 30th that we are fortunate enough to have that represent the Des Moines area, and none of the real wins that we had for the community would have been possible without their deep dedication, both the legislators and their staff. So today we're going to look at what happened in 2022 for the session, specifically for those issues that we're working on for Des Moines, and then look at the outlook for the rest of the year. Our big asks were budget asks, and we had one in the transportation budget and one in the capital budget. The transportation budget was $3.5 million to complete the Barnes Creek South segment, and that was successful. So we did get $3.5 million for that. And with the other funds that Andrew has been able to help secure in the past, also from Sound Transit and King County, there's enough money to move forward on that project now, and so Andrew is working on that to make it happen now. We had a new project for 223rd on the Urban Creek and the Green Street bioswale that we would like to build there, but first we need to design that. So we're asking for planning dollars for that. We asked for 300,000, and we got more than that. We got 309,000. And special shout out to Senator Kaiser in that she marked it up a little bit. In that Department of Commerce takes a administration fee, and with this add up, we will get the 300,000 as opposed to 300,000 minus an admin fee. So that was thank you, Karen Kaiser. So both of our monetary asks came through this year. Then we also were working specifically on a couple of public safety asks bills that we helped to craft and move. And both of these really came from the committee system there at the city council, and through the public safety committee. We'd heard that catalytic converter theft was becoming a big issue, and in talking with Ken Thomas about that, he confirmed on how that had just been skyrocketing in Des Moines, and Des Moines isn't alone in this, a statewide problem, and also the real street racing problem that we've been having down at Redondo and other locations, and our inability to put speed cameras there with current regulations. So we went in, worked with our area legislators early on. I had some great cooperation. Orwell and Tina Orwell and Jesse Johnson, both were sponsors of on the catalytic converter bill. there were a couple of different bills out there, but the one that Tina and Jesse helped sponsor, that was the vehicle that did end up moving forward. We were active early on and helping to craft that, and then the bill changed a lot over the course of the legislative dance. Mayor Mahoney was extremely active throughout. I think he testified at every committee hearing that we had on that, and it was great because there were a few other public officials that testified once or twice, but it's nice to have someone following the whole thing and making, because I had to go through multiple committees then in both houses. So there were several steps. And again, thank you to the mayor for putting that time forth. It makes a difference when local governments do weigh in. And I know in past years, we've had a variety of counselors come down to Olympia and testify on different bills of importance to Des Moines. Obviously, the last couple of years, this has all been by Zoom, but hopefully in 23, we'll be able to do that again in person. And others of you who have passions about any of these particular bills, would be great to have you come on down as well. But long and the short of it, with the catalytic converter bill, it did get through the whole legislative process and was signed. It's very rare when something goes from idea to being signed in just a few months. Because legislative process, often you have to take a run at this 3 or 4 years in a row before something gets passed. But this was very timely. Lots of different communities felt it, and while the bill did evolve considerably, it's great that there's another tool for Ken and other police chiefs to now be able to use to try to ratchet back the epidemic of catalytic converter theft that is going on. Also with street racing, camera use is traffic cameras have been very limited on where they can be used, only in school zones, at certain red lights, and at railroad crossings. That's not where we were having the racing issues, and many other communities as well. We had something that started out as a bill. It got pared down and put into a bill necessary to enact the transportation budget, but it's there. And again, it did morph, and but we've ended up with something that could be very useful. And we can now, if we designate a non-racing area, and we can show that this has been a problem in a certain area, we can put up to 1 camera per 10,000 of population. So so for Des Moines, we could put forth 3 different ones right now if we so choose. So that's another tool that we didn't have a few months ago, that because of Des Moines' interest and the very help from our legislators, that's not you guys have helped to craft policy and change laws. So going forward, looking at what's happening the remainder of this year and into next. Obviously, this year is an election year for state offices. What that means is all of the House seats and half of the Senate will be decided this election in November. And currently, there's expectation that there could be a lot more change than usually happens in elections for a variety of reasons. One is that the once every decade redistricting was just completed, and that impact on Des Moines, it's kind of on the margins. We remain in both the 30th and 33rd legislative districts. The 30th has gotten a little bit bigger, or it has a little bit more of Des Moines than it did before. We're also 100% within the 8th legislative district. Both the 30th and 33rd have become a little more democratic than they were before, but again, just by a small amount. There's also been a lot of expectation because this is an off-year election right after a president was elected 2 years ago. Often there are big swings both on a national and a state basis during those elections, often for the party that is out of power. Current state of play, again, is 29-20 in the Senate with the Democratic majority, and 57-41 with Republicans. Most people are thinking that might get a little bit tighter after the elections, but hard to say. And it would have to be a fairly big change to actually change majorities there. Locally, 5 out of the 6 incumbents are running for re-election this year. And interestingly, both, since only half the Senate is up, the 33rd and 30th are on the same cycle. So both of our senators, Kaiser and Wilson, will be up for re-election this year, and they are running. The only person not running for re-election is Jesse Johnson. And Johnson is now moving to join Treasurer Pellicciati in the Treasurer's office. Again, we will miss Representative Johnson he was great to work with on the catalytic converter legislation and other issues as well. Being an open seat, that's attracted a lot of candidates. And interestingly, looking at the PDC on who's filed so far the other day, or who is registered with PDC, the 30th had approximately 12, 13 different candidates who already signed up for those 3 different races. 33rd only had the 3 incumbents. Actual registration doesn't start actually it starts next week and runs for 1 week. And then we will know for sure next Friday at 5 exactly who is running, and then it'll be interesting to see as the elections unfold after that. So after the elections, then we'll be back to the legislature that starts in January. It's a long session, first year of the biennium, so it's a budget year, and that's normally the better year to be coming in with budget asks. And it is hard to say this early how good of a year it is going to be for making budget asks. Right now, the budget outlook is great. It's been each time that they report in how the state income is looking. It's been beating the expectations, and so there's a growing surplus. And while that's fantastic news, we of course have major wildcards out there. Highest inflation that we've seen in 40 years. The war in the Ukraine creates many different questions, and then we still have COVID out there. So while it looks a very good year, inflation and those other things can eat up what looks like a wonderful budget year, and it could become a much more difficult budget year. So we will be assessing as we get closer to January. But still, in the coming months, we should definitely be crafting our own asks internally. What does the city want from the state? What should we be going after for 2023? In talking with staff initially, a few ideas do come to mind. One thing in the transportation budget, as I think all of you know, a couple of years ago, we were very involved in getting that task force legislation put forward to create a second major airport that will help to move traffic, or at least mitigate the growth of traffic at SeaTac by having another facility constructed. They will be done with and come back with a recommendation no later than February 15th of next year, or that it was going to be earlier, but that's been moved back to that date for a number of reasons. But since it is a long session, that's still early enough in the session that the information will be coming to the legislature on what that recommendation is. Probably important to keep momentum going with whatever they do come back with there, and making sure that there are some funds to help move that process forward. And again, this is going to be a very long-term thing. That airport isn't going to be created in the next biennium, but it will be a multi-year process. And long-term planning is like when people plant trees. You may not be around to enjoy the shade from that tree, but important that we work on it now to help improve the quality of life in Des Moines long-term. Operating budget. Talking with Ken and Michael, and also South King Fire and Rescue, there's been talk about trying to really work together closely on mental health response programs, and that seems to be a natural where we might want to try to get some state funding to help with a pilot program on that. We're also hoping to go out for a capital budget request. There are a variety of projects in Des Moines that could benefit by state funding. One might be the next phase of 223rd, but there are other projects we can be looking at as well. We may also need to be asking on reallocation. Again, it's so difficult to get federal permits for water work, and as we saw with the bulkhead, where that project was delayed by years from the feds, which is very frustrating. Ourselves and about 100 other projects are facing similar challenges now, trying to get permits for Redondo. We have money, we have plans, we are ready to go, but we need federal permits. And again, that's working closely with Andrew but everyone else is in the same non-moving boat on that as well. But those are some initial ideas. Of course, please think about other priorities, different things that we might want to be coming in with for next session. So all of this is changeable, and it is your decision. Again, this is very much a team sport. It wouldn't work without many people cooperating, making things happen. This is an older photo, and again, there haven't been big signing ceremonies because of COVID in the last couple of years. But through cooperation, that's how we get legislation passed. So that's all I've got.
Anthony, thank you. Mayor, there are, as Anthony said, I mean, this is a process that we'll go through with the council, identifying priorities, capital requests, all of that as we go forward. So it's just a starting point. But I have to say, not only do we have probably the two best districts in terms of support and accomplishment and leadership in the state, we also have the best legislative advocates. So Anthony, thank you so much for your efforts this year. Awesome return.
I appreciate it. Yeah, no.
So Mayor, 30 questions, or else we could go on.
Well, before I go to the questions, I'd agree. Working with Anthony on the catalytic converter process was a very positive experience, and I thank thank him for opening the doors for me to be able to speak about that concern of our residents. With that, I'm going to go to Deputy Mayor Buxton, and I see you, Councilmember Harris, as next.
Thank you, Mayor. And I agree as well. I'm very thankful, thankful for this report, thankful for our advocate, thankful for our legislators. They work very hard. And nice report, Anthony. I appreciate your work so much. Outside of your hearing, the word on the street is you're very respected and liked. And I appreciate having somebody down in Olympia that's what people say.
Thank you.
So that's,
I appreciate that.
it's how to get things done, right? Just clarity on one point, you talked about when you were talking about the Redondo Pier, the word relocation is used there just for clarity's sake. I don't think you're talking about relocating the pier to another place, but could you, just for those who are watching?
Council member, or Deputy Mayor, I'm gonna save Anthony the stress of trying to figure out how to answer that, and it's reallocation.
Okay.
Which means that we need to have the money recommitted to that because of the time frame, not a physical relocation.
Okay, well, thank you. Maybe I misread it because I do have a pretty about a 15-inch screen here. So thank you for that. I couldn't see it very well.
Yeah, and I might have done a typo there too. I know I'll double check, but no, I certainly when the on budgets from the legislature, it's in a biennium, and our biennium will end in July 1st, 23. And if the feds don't move, we're not going to be able to spend the money before then. Generally, reallocation is pretty straightforward, and we should be able to get it reallocated. But of course, the state greatly prefers that we spend the money in the biennium that we've asked it for, or asked for it. So, but there are hoops we're going to have to jump through in order to make that happen. And we might want to expand it. In talking with Andrew, as all of you know, inflation is having a huge impact. And while we got money for Redondo a year ago, that money doesn't buy nearly what it did back then. And so unfortunately, this federal delay, it really costs us because we can't build it for the money that we've received. Those costs are going up, and we also might want to expand it on shoreside to include the bathroom work as well, and be more beneficial to do it all together. But that's a fairly big budgetary ask as well. So again, these are ideas, but that might be something to go after for 23.
Thank you. Moving on to Councilmember Harris.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Anthony. So this is, something of a expansive thing. I'm just struck by how you and I are both old enough to remember the glory days of equalization. And we now ask for specific things, a road and this project and so on. Is there ever any discussion amongst the cities or, somewhere I don't have access to about basically providing some form of ongoing structural revenue to cities like Des Moines?
It would be nice if there was, Councilor Harris, and I agree. And also from the Fed days when CDBG, there'd just be huge amounts of money that would be coming first to the state and then it'd be passed down to the cities. Yeah, and that's all gone, where that doesn't happen anymore, or in specific grant programs that we have to go out for, or as you say, these earmarks that we've received. It would be nice, but as budgets have gotten tighter at other levels, while it was very helpful to see this federal money that we did see during the the COVID crisis, but I think it's likely going to be a generational thing, and unless there are major structural changes at both the state and federal level, there's just not the cash flow that they would be willing to give up control of right now to pass to the locals.
Well, no, I just noticed that, there's 16 billion for the grandiose transportation thing, which is marvelous. But, as far as just providing that bit of help to each city for the ongoing paying of the bills, I'm just wondering how or if there's any chance of ever getting back to that, or is this is just what it's going to be,
Well, from the gas tax, of course, there is a portion of that that does come directly back to cities, but that is on mostly on a per capita basis, and I forget off the top of my head how much Des Moines gets every year, and it's helpful, but it is not enough. I mean, it's a small fraction of what we need to do local transportation programs. So that structurally is there, but it's limited, very limited.
So Mayor, I would suggest, if that's an area of interest for the council, that kind of in a larger topic could be addressed in the future at some other venue.
Absolutely. It looks like we'll be obviously wanting to have discussions and shop ideas about what our next ask will be. So that can be part of that discussion.
Well, yeah, and if I could say, again, the committee process worked well on coming up with a couple of things to go after this year, policy-wise, and definitely if council committees, in your discussions, if something comes up and people say, yes, we need to do this, or Des Moines would be a much better place if blank. In some ways, I think what happened this past year worked pretty well, where taking one or two issues and trying to run with that on a policy level, and then also having one or two budgetary requests, because I know many cities go in with 50 different things, and that's really hard. So again, if we focus on just a few priorities, and then also I know where to spend my time. I know that's what you guys want, because if we make it really thin and you say work on 50 things, okay, you can try, but the chances of getting 50 of these are low. Chances of getting 3 or 4, okay, yeah, that's much better. So yeah, as long as we prioritize, as you guys have been fantastic at doing in recent years, I think that's our road to success.
I'd agree. I think we have been successful. I remember when we first started and we had like a pretty intense 2-page document or more. We've been much more successful refining it down to just a few asks. I think I've been told by some of our legislators, they definitely appreciate that as well. With that, I'm going to go to Council Member Steinmetz.
Hi, Anthony. Thank you for everything that you do. I think you've done a fantastic job.
Thank you.
We just found out last week that there is not going to be a pedestrian bridge between Sound Transit Station and Highline College. This seems to me to be a disaster waiting to happen as somebody tries to run across 99 in order to get to a class on time. Is the state legislature even the right place to ask for funding to do something like that? Or is that a Sound Transit issue? Or is it a community college issue? And how, so I don't even know the right place to go. And so maybe that's just what I'm bringing up here is.
And also, could we have Dan, could you comment on that? Because council member, as we do, there's billions of dollars spent on this process. So it makes perfect sense. But Dan, do you have a comment on the Sound Transit at all?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out where to begin. I guess I don't want to take away from the council member's question because I think it's a fair question about where to go if you wanted to pursue that. The place you wouldn't go is Sound Transit. They've made it clear they're not going to do that, and they've studied that improvement, and it just wasn't warranted based on the work we've done with the communities and Sound Transit there. But it doesn't mean you couldn't try to get a legislative appropriation for something like that if the communities felt it would be warranted. So it'd be something that collectively between the city of Kent, the majority of that location is in the city of Kent. We have one leg of that intersection. So it would be pretty important for them to weigh in on that. And Corp, obviously you'd have to have the college on board as well. So just a couple of thoughts.
Thanks, Anthony, please.
Yeah, no, I would think it would default to Sound Transit because of their, it would logically be part of that station station construction. We could try to get the state interested. It is going over a state highway, 99 there. So it likely would take several different jurisdictions, and I would suspect with the length of that that would require, gosh, I couldn't even guess on how expensive that is, but it's going to be massively expensive. And I could call on Andrew to pull a figure out of the air, but it'll be tough. And if we want to do that, I suspect it'll take a multi-year effort to try to get the money together, and probably multi-jurisdictional. Yeah, as Dan mentioned, of course, Kent and ourselves, Sound Transit, the state, and we probably need federal dollars too in order to get up to, guessing 20-30 million. I don't know, but it would not be cheap, certainly. So I don't know if that answers. It is not a good answer to your question, but hopefully that gives some ideas at least.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any further questions before we move on with the city manager's report? Seeing none, Michael, you have it back.
Wait,
Yeah,
thank
Oh wait,
you.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Oxiger. I just
Sorry.
saw him pop up there.
Thank you, Mayor Mahoney, and thank you, Anthony, for your report. Just one point of clarification. I know the redistricting process was fraught this time and very confusing. We remain in the 9th congressional district, don't we?
Oh, yes. Okay. That was a typo on my, I'd been talking with people from the 8th earlier, and yes, we remain in the 9th, 100% of the 9th. I don't believe what you see on the PowerPoint. So thank you, Councillor Oxinger, for catching that. Yes, we are with Adam Smith, not with Kim Schreier.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Nutting.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Anthony, for the update here. I just was wondering, gas tax was mentioned, and there has been some discussion about putting a pause on the gas tax since Washington's got one of the highest gas taxes in the region. Well, in the states. Have you heard anything about that to help ease the pain at the pump, so to speak?
Yes, there's certainly been talk about it, but not talk from the people who are in a position to make it happen. and so that talk realistically is wishful thinking. And the problem with stopping the gas tax for a while is those funds are needed for these transportation projects. And if you cut off those funds, then you can't build these projects. And they've been budgeted and promised. And as we're seeing with the problems we're having with the feds and our Redondo fishing pier, if you add a few years to that timeline, well, and as you know, in construction, those costs are going crazy. And so if we delay a few years, it's not getting cheaper. So it would be nice for personal budgets, certainly, if they would suspend those. I don't see that happening in Washington State. I would be stunned if it would happen. But you know, stranger things have happened, but very unlikely.
Thank you. Just to end all the rumor mill,
Yeah.
questions about it. So
Right.
thank you very much.
Right. Yeah.
I would add, Councilmember Nutting, that in like skateboard and some other discussions, there's been discussions, particularly about electric vehicles, and there's been some pilots on mileage as taxing off the mileage people do, or a blend of the two. So that's all possible in the next few years.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, Michael, you can continue on with your report, please.
Thank you, Mayor. And again, thank you, Anthony. I'd like to move over to a presentation focusing on our parks and Parks and Recreation update. And the rationale here is I've asked Susan to at least start the process. When Susan became our interim parks director, she had inherited a very difficult situation, which, to the credit of her and our staff, and support from the city attorney and myself, council, we're able to turn that around and accomplish a number of things. And so now that we're at a transition point where Nicole's going to step up as director of parks, I thought it would be a good time to kind of look back on what's been accomplished and look forward as to where we're going. So with that, and especially in the context of the challenges we've all faced with COVID and being able to provide the services and activities that we all want the community to enjoy and have access to. So with that, Susan, if you would do your part of this.
Okay, thank you, City Manager. Tara, can you bring up the PowerPoint, please? Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Susan Cesar, City's Chief Strategic Officer, and later on in the presentation, I will hand it off to Nicole Nordholm, the Parks, Rec, and Senior Services Director. Next slide, please. In this presentation, we're going to talk just a little bit about where we were in the past, some issues and some steps that were taken. We're not going to go into major detail here because the council has previously had a presentation that went into that detail in November of 2018 and has also had regular updates. I'm going to talk a little bit about the new challenges primarily related to COVID-19, some accomplishments, and then Nicole is going to give us the look forward. Next slide, please. First, I want to acknowledge that some of the issues that we're going to briefly touch on are not related to the current park staff, and they occurred under former management. And I also want to acknowledge the efforts of our staff in moving forward and meeting challenges with a great amount of creativity, exemplifying the best qualities of public employees, and continually making the extra effort to serve our community in the face of the pandemic challenge, which has been a major one for us. Next slide, please. So a little bit of history. As you will recall, we had some retirements in 2018 of the previous director and the senior services manager. And we did a succession planning review of the department, operations, programs, and processes in that transition. And we found that a new way of doing business was needed that safeguarded public funds and process. So administrative changes were implemented, leading to a new culture. And this was especially true regarding the handling of money and financial reporting. Next slide, please. Some other issues that we had to address were safety. We had a facilities review with the building official at that time, and we identified a number of safety issues at the field house and the senior activity center that had not previously been brought to the attention of the administration. There's a list there and a few pictures of some of the issues that were apparent at that time. And we addressed the urgent issues immediately and the additional work shortly thereafter. Next slide, please. Challenges. So COVID-19 was, of course, a major disruption to this department as it was for others. We had planned in 2020 to examine the role of Parks, Rec, and Senior Services and review our programs and see what kind of changes we needed to be the most value for the community and to bring those recommendations forward to maximize community value. Next slide. And then what we actually had happen in 2020 was very different. We had a very shifting and uncertain regulatory and safety environment. We had, as you'll recall, the regulatory limits on gathering. We had safety considerations for participants and staff. We had school district considerations. There were multiple schedule options. There were virtual and in-person classes, so the coordination became more difficult with the school district. And then all the actions that we ended up taking were done in consideration of safety and with emergency management consultation. So our initial response, we had to suspend in-person programmings and community events, unfortunately. We spent a lot of time processing refunds and answering people's questions. We had some staff on standby, and we did not hire essentially our regular seasonal employees. We were able, though, with our creative staff members to fill the gap a little bit with virtual programs, virtual soccer and basketball clinic with the Sounders and the Storm, Skyhawks, other virtual camps and classes. We had a drive-in style movie at the marina and some virtual family programs. Next slide, please. In 2020, that year, senior services was particularly difficult to figure out ways to continue to serve our population because we had a very vulnerable group of people, and we also had the increased need and demand for services. So initially, we closed the facility to in-person programs and rentals, and we implemented our takeout hot lunch service. And we were one of the first to do this. We started preparing around 30 lunches per day, and we're generally up to about 130 per day. We also implemented delivery for some places, and we continually reviewed our safety procedures to keep our vulnerable seniors safe. We also were able to reach out to them for special occasions. We sent flowers and cards. The staff at the activity center were very good in knowing, who had a special occasion. They did phone check-ins just to check on people and chat. We had social worker availability on the phone. And of course, you'll remember the meal voucher program, the EATS program, that was very popular as well. And we continued work on our African Diaspora Cultural Hub, which was grant funded and in partnership with the Central Area Senior Center. Next slide, please. So then the following year, 2021, we started to move toward a little more normalcy. We were able to restart small in-person programs at the field house and the activity center, picnics, walks, dog obedience, dance, martial arts, those types of programs we were able to hold, outdoor activities, lower risk sports, and our new after school care at the field house, which was coordinated with the Highline School District. And we also were able to meet the greater human service needs with increased funding that the council allocated. Next slide, please. Accomplishments. So I want to go briefly over a few things that we were able to accomplish during this time. And this is along the vein of using the time during COVID wisely. When our programs were shut down, that also presented a little bit of an opportunity to do some other things. We finished the Parks Rec and Senior Services Master Plan, which is our 6-year update, and it maintains our grant eligibility. It was accomplished on time and on budget. And I really want to compliment our staff for that. Nicole and Kyle and really everyone in the department worked on this plan. It included a robust public outreach and a statistically valid resident survey. So we have a great guide for future city investments in Parks, Rec, and Senior Services. We also worked on grant applications and we had some success there, and we'll hear a little bit more about that as we move on. Next slide, please. Oh, what happened to my pictures? There were pictures of 5 different park improvement projects and playgrounds that were on this slide, but I wanted to thank Public Works and note that all these improvements that we did, I think SJU was on there, Wooten, Westwood, Midway, City, Kitty probably were the others. We did new playground equipment and other improvements at Midway, and it really took everyone's efforts, including the park staff and Public Works, to get these projects done. Next slide, please.
Sorry, it said I had an error. Let me try this again.
Okay, thanks.
It froze. Here's your pictures.
Oh, okay, great. So you can see the park improvement projects. I think I got them all. Okay, next slide. We also were able to do the field house drainage improvements. This field was always a problem as far as seasonally. It would be very wet, and this allows for longer additional seasonal use. And this project was fully grant funded. Next slide, please. We also took the opportunity when our facilities were empty to do some interior work. The Beach Park Auditorium got a new floor and paint that was fully grant funded. It accommodates the Alvin Ailey dance camp of the Seattle Theater Group and similar athletic activities because it has some give in the floor. It also improved the look and made it more appealing as a rental facility. The Senior Activity Center also got new floor, I think some paint, bathrooms, and we also were able to do some deferred maintenance work that needed to be done and sound system improvements with grant funds. Next slide, please. We also were able to do some acquisitions and expand our park system. Soundview Park, as you all know, the next slide will have some pictures, but this one, the acquisition was fully grant funded by the Recreation Conservation Office of the state and the King County Conservation Futures money. The park development is currently in process and it's very close to completion. One of the exciting things about this project is that we're going to be incorporating artwork that's culturally appropriate and coordinated with the interested tribes. There'll be a lizard woman story, some native plantings, and a welcome figure. And Nicole has been working, and Andrew as well, been working very closely with the tribes on this. Next slide, please. And here are some pictures. I think they're moving so fast out there that it probably is even more. These are only a few days old, but I think there's even more grass planted and all. It looks absolutely fantastic. If you haven't been by there, I encourage a trip to see how it's going. Next slide, please. The other acquisition that we were able to do was Midway Park, and we were able to purchase 4 parcels. And this one, I just have to say, is truly remarkable because none of those parcels were on the market. And we were able to apply for and get purchase and sale agreements and close these transactions. And it took a lot of people, the legal department, it took the Parks Department, Public Works for some of the improvements, I mean, and community development. Everybody participated to make this happen. We also had the mini pitch put in by our partnership with the Brave Foundation. We didn't need to pay anything for that. And they've committed to ongoing programming and free balls for life. We also conducted some community outreach at this park as part of the Parks Rec and Senior Services Master Plan update. And we have a concept that the community is interested in seeing for the use of the new area. Next slide, please. So on this one, as you know, moving forward, I'm going to hand it over to Nicole after this slide. And she, as you know, she's been promoted to the Parks Rec and Senior Service Director. We've also trained multiple staff in grant applications and administration. This is something that we feel is important going forward, that more than one person knows how to do these grant applications and increases our capacity to apply for things as we see them. We've also been able to restart larger and indoor programming as the pandemic changes and safety allows. And all of these initiatives as we change things are coordinated with our emergency services with the primary consideration of safety for our participants, our staff, and the community. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Nicole to talk about the future.
Great. Thank you, Susan, and hello, everyone. As Susan said, I am the new Parks Director, and I truly appreciate this role, and I have high hopes for the direction of the department and the community engagement and programming that we have in our future. So on this slide, I did touch on a lot of this in my update the last month, but we've been very intentional in bringing back a lot of our vital recreation programs. So our youth soccer just started this past Saturday with the first games, and this will run through the first week in July. I really want to just thank, our staff. Kyle's been instrumental in organizing everything and getting staffing on board. We, like Susan mentioned, have small classes going on in the field house. We've also started some Skyhawks programming. So tennis also started this past weekend, and we have some upcoming basketball, flag football, and some combination sports camps to look forward to. As I also touched on, the STEM camp, so it's through Play Well, and it's a Lego STEM camp. We have 3 weeks solidified for the summer, and there will be camps for the younger age groups, and then a few that focus on the teens and the older kids. So that's really exciting. Camp Chaos, we are actively planning. We've been recruiting and interviewing folks, and we're very hopeful that we'll get there to be able to run a version of the camp that we'll bring back for the community. Movies in the park, we have 2 set at the beach park, and then 1 will be happening during the National Night Out at Midway Park. And then, like I mentioned before, to the Rave Foundation, we have a few sports clinics that have happened, as well as UK soccer camp. Next slide, please. Okay, so Susan touched on this as well, but really the staff has been doing an excellent job of recruiting and interviewing the applicants that we receive. And we are very hopeful for all of the activities we have up and coming that we can, between a combination of recruiting staff and also seeking help elsewhere, be able to run our programs. Next slide. So staffing programs are, like I said, again, retaining staff has been a pretty big challenge. However, as you all are aware, we're doing our best with recruiting as well as posting jobs, places, advertising, going out into the community. So we've been successful in the last few weeks as far as recruiting folks, and we're hopeful for what will come. Next slide. The Senior Activity Center. So programs are back up to almost full swing at this activity center. We are doing the hot lunch takeout, and we're allowing folks to dine inside, and more people are coming and staying, which is really excellent to see. The EATS program is incredibly successful. The vouchers are gone now in 15-20 minutes. So that's been a really big push to get folks back up there. A lot of the programs you see listed here, we have appointment-based card games, social hours, we have the massage therapist, legal services back. So there's just a lot that's coming up that people can either make appointments for or come up to participate in. And then we also, oh, next slide, thanks. We're also very excited for planning for the May 31st is going to be the date we plan to resume in-person lunch, meaning not on the takeout plates. It'll be in-person dining through Catholic Community Services. They kind of got the go-ahead to go forward with this. We are seeking volunteers for both dishwashing and additional support. And we also have an active recruitment for a van driver so we can start planning for trips and outings, which we hear that a lot of the seniors are very excited about. Next slide. And last but not least, I also mentioned this in my last update, but volunteering has been increasing in popularity and numbers that want to volunteer, which is wonderful. The community gardens are getting a lot of the attention they need. And there have been multiple cleanup days and work crews that have been out in our various parks, along with a number of events that are on the calendar. So we have a great partnership with Forterra, and they just this last Saturday as well had 20 youth from the African Young Dreamers Empowerment Program volunteer at Sanju to just do an educational piece as well as a lot of cleanup. And they got rid of a lot of weeds and plants, and it's just been really wonderful getting these updates on people that are out helping in our parks. Next slide. And yeah, with that, we are excited to move forward and see what comes in the future. And I will turn it over to Michael. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole, and thank you, Susan. Just a couple of points in addition. The acquisitions of the parcels at Midway, and I think Susan mentioned this, but just to reemphasize, were really extraordinary from the perspective of they gave us a waiver on the match. And that's one of the first times that's happened. And it happened for all the parcels that we were able to purchase up there. So in the past, at times where the park's budget had impacted the general fund because matches had been committed to based on funding, this was something that did not impact our general fund. And I don't know how Susan and Nicole convinced RCO and Conservation Futures to not have a match, but they did, and partly is because it was such a well-situated park in a community where that was there wasn't enough park availability. None of those would have happened without Janelle Stoneback working as our realtor, and she just is amazing. She gets things done before you hang up the phone. Really incredible. And also, the other thing, you know, in all the activities that are going on and the challenges that we're trying to meet and everything, this has all been in the midst of COVID. And as you know, as a city and as a culture, what we've done with COVID has been very, very cautious. So we are selectively trying to identify events that can be held over the summer. I have a meeting next week with Del Rivero to talk about ways to facilitate the 12-year-old girls softball Little League teams and all-star teams. And there are other activities the city is becoming engaged in. Fireworks is one, to assure that activities can occur with the appropriate safety mechanisms. Unfortunately, it's not quite as simple as just saying, well, we need volunteers to run the programs, because the volunteers, first of all, they need background checks. Secondly, they need to be shown exactly what needs to be done, and then that needs to be supervised so that the quality of the facilities, no reflection on volunteers, but the quality that we expect relative to hygiene and everything else, bathrooms, maintenance, park maintenance, all of the preparation of the fields, all of those things take place at a quality level to assure the games the kids are going to play, or the adolescents, are of the highest quality. So there's been some apparent confusion in the community about our motivation. Our motivation is simply to provide for what we can provide. Let people know based on the labor shortage that everybody faces, all municipalities, parks departments, and trades and everything else. That's what we're grappling with is post-COVID, it appears there's a shortage of labor in almost every area. And without the appropriate staff to conduct the events, it's not as simple as kind of snapping our fingers and saying, well, we can have volunteers do it. It's not fair to the volunteers. It's not fair to the participants. So I just wanted to make that point. I think Susan and Nicole have done an incredible job, and our staff has done an incredible job of maintaining the ability to put on everything that you were just shown and to open for other activities as we are able. We do know that COVID has been spreading, the current variant has been spreading very, very quickly. It appears as though hospitalizations are down. So it's kind of good news, or wrapped in not the best news, is that there is an active contagious virus affecting everyone, or at least many people. So with that, Council, if you have any questions or comments, be happy.
Michael, before we get started in the comments, Dan Brewer also had a comment.
Great.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to circle back to the presentation that Susan and Nicole gave. And Nicole, I hate to put you on the spot here, but there was quite an extensive list of things, great presentation of all the things that you've been working on. Could you summarize very quickly, how many people do you have you had to work on all those projects over the last 2 years during COVID? How many people are in recreation, parks and recreation?
How many staff do we have?
How many staff did that work?
We have 3 full-time staff, and we just hired a 4th.
Thank you.
Okay. With that, we'll go to questions. Councilmember Nutting, and then I see you, Councilmember Steinmetz.
First off, congratulations, Nicole. Well deserved. And second, nice presentation, Susan and Nicole. Thank you very much for that. And then third, because I'm the father of a 15-year-old going on 16 or 23, whichever one you ask her about, and the high school students, what is the age limit or cutoff for working in any of the parks department for the club chaos or whatnot? Because a lot of the businesses in town are 18 and older. So a lot of the high school students are not able to apply for jobs in town. But anyways, what's the cutoff there for age?
Yeah, so we can take 15-year-olds. There's just a limit to the hours and when they can work. And it's just different on the scale, but we definitely will take any 15 and older you have, bring them our way.
So due to the shortage in workforce, you'd welcome 15 and older.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. That's my only questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Nutting. I know that a couple of the coaches up at Mount Rainier High School are encouraging some of their students to apply as well for a great summer job as well. Moving over to Councilmember Steinmetz.
And I'd just like to add that, probably beats working in fast food. It's a lot more fun. My first question I had is, with that robust staff of 3, how many citizens do you think you served?
That's a great question. I mean, we right now for the aftercare, we have about 15 to 20 children per day. And then with soccer registration, I mean, there's 80 to 100 kids that are playing soccer. And then not to mention the folks that do dance and the dog obedience. So, I mean, we're serving hundreds of people, both children and families.
Mm-hmm. That's great. I hope maybe you can track that a little, Just to
Yeah,
have
I
that
do
sense.
have numbers that I could get you specific, but that was just off my top of my head.
I understand. I didn't give you any warning that was coming. So, and I'm not sure if this is from Michael based upon what he just said, but I have heard that somehow there was a Little League playoff that was scheduled at the park that has been canceled. But I thought you said you were talking to somebody about the girls' Little League. So I don't know this very well at all. I'm trying to figure out what is the reality of the situation.
Yeah, fair enough. No, what's going on is that I believe it's the same event you're talking about. And last year we held the boys' Little League Championship, and it was a great event, wonderful event in the middle of the summer. But this year, out of caution, partly because we only have 3 staff members, we don't want to be in a position of having to cancel something late. So we sent out a serious cautionary email to everyone and said, if you can find another venue, you may be safer doing that because we're not sure what's going to happen. And if we can't, you know, I've talked with the folks at Highline about getting people from Highline College to work. And so far we've gotten 0 response from that, which is unfortunate. But I'm going to meet with the organizer of that Little League tournament you refer to next week and try to find a way that we can accommodate that tournament this summer. So it may be premature to say canceled. We certainly didn't want people to be in a position of finding out on the 15th of July that their tournament on the 20th would not be taking place. We wanted to give some lead time. And then we're going to be looking at it on a case-by-case basis if people have an interest in pursuing an event.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, thank you.
I think that there's a lot of misinformation out there that absolutes, it's not that absolute yet. So that's great.
It's not that absolute, and it's certainly not discretionary. I mean, we love the whole point is to hold events. So we're not trying to, we're just trying to make sure that everybody's needs get addressed. And unfortunately, COVID and the labor shortage has created some real problems in doing that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Seeing Councilmember Harris's hand up.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, this is sort of like, you know, what have you done for me lately? But, you know, this is great stuff, but I have to ask about Cecil Powell Park because And any news on that for the, you know, near future?
Are you talking about for the play equipment or?
Yeah, I know that the costs have gone through the roof, but I hear about, you know, the pirate ship at the field house and so on, and I'm just trying to get a timeline.
Yeah, I don't have a timeline per se, but it's on both Parks and Public Works. It's on the plan for updating and getting the play equipment back into that park. So we're aware that it needs to happen, and I've talked to various community members about it. So it's in the plan.
So, and, you know, just one little bit of advocacy is that there's just this, because in the South End, there is this, you know, dearth of park space. There's always this talk about partnering with Highline schools or the college to try to do some kind of shared utilization. And I would just, but it seems to be challenging, and whatever could be done to make that happen, you just see this areas that could be put to use, and I don't know what the mechanism is, but that would, I think that would be a pretty fantastic thing. Thank you.
Councilmember Oxiger.
Yes, just thank you, Mayor. City Manager Matthias, could you elaborate on the situation with using volunteers? It sounded almost like you're advising that because of new restrictions that, you know, we should go to staff handling some of these events? And are you saying that in the case of fireworks over Des Moines, that would be handled by the city rather than by, say, Destination Des Moines?
I think those are separate questions. Relative to the fireworks, we had several meetings identifying the requirements for safety, especially with the bulkhead in the current condition that it's in. And after discussions with Destination Des Moines and with our staff and with our first responders, we offered to take on the responsibility in holding the event, except for purchasing the fireworks and setting them off. And I think that it's not unfair to characterize Destination Des Moines' concern about all the safety requirements as being more than possibly they felt they could deal with effectively. So in the interest of having safety in our community, not the least of which was working with the crane operator who's doing the bulkhead work at the North Marina parking lot, who has agreed to transport the fireworks with the crane from the marina to the end of the pier. So what we did was take on the responsibility of the cost of hiring a number of additional staff through an agency, working with Seattle's finest to make sure there's appropriate security, because our police are called away to do other things on the 4th of July, to do crowd management, to do parking controls, to do access, to make sure that there's appropriate security, working with our first responders. We took on the responsibility of all that to allow Destination Des Moines to focus financially and operationally on providing the fireworks and setting them off. So it's a joint effort, and we did that simply because we'd like to see the community benefit from the enjoyment of the fireworks. As far as volunteers in general, volunteers are great. We love it. We love to engage people and have them participate. However, these days, which hasn't always been the case in the past, we require background checks to assure the safety of children. And then volunteers also, it's great for them to show up, but at the point they do that, which we appreciate, they need to be kind of given tasks and have those tasks supervised to make sure it all works together to accomplish the quality of event we have. We simply don't have the staff at the moment to do that on very much of a widespread basis. That's what I was saying.
Okay, would this also affect, for example, the Waterland Festival and also the, say, the Trick or Treat Path, which are, you know, both volunteer driven? Are these, is this something the city is going to?
What's that, Deputy Mayor?
Michael, I'm making a point of order about the question about this time in the agenda and wondering if some of these subjects are outside of the scope of this item on our agenda today. Not devaluing the subject, but it was a Parks and Rec update and a legislative update, and I'm just it's wondering about the
yes. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I would agree. I think at this point, the discussion of future events probably is something that could be done by email or at a later time. I agree. This is a reference to Parks and Recreation.
Excuse me, though, Mr. Mayor. It was, you know, the point was brought up about volunteers and, you know, the ability to carry out, you know, these functions. I guess the question has to do with. The question has to do whether or not the city is going to assume these activities, and I would assume it would be through the Parks and Rec Department.
Councilmember Oxiger, there's a difference between volunteers at the Parks and Recreation events and separate entities like this, where the city would be in partnership and assist with like police and public works, et cetera. And I think that's where you've got those blended together and they're different. In this case, I'm going to rule in favor of the point of order and we're going to move on. I think we were going somewhere that was not on the agenda. Councilmember Harris, you had another round of questions?
Could we, to avoid this back and forth, since I am supposed to be the waterland liaison, could the council obtain an update as to basically just restating what City Manager Matthias just said formally, just so we understand where we're at, so we're not talking or.
Point of order.
I think that's it. I think.
Point of order.
Go ahead.
If we are making recommendations, I would recommend that we take that to that segment of the agenda where we can ask for either an administrative update or something to be discussed in committee.
Yes, agreed, Deputy Mayor Buxton. That was just exactly where I was headed. This can be brought up in the new business after we get through the other business we're attending to. And that will satisfy Councilmember Oxiger's request as well as yours, Councilmember Harris. So with that, we'll let you, City Manager, continue on with the administrative report.
Right. And, fortunately, that does conclude the report, but I want to emphasize from my view that I think the manner in which Susan and now Nicole have conducted the business of our Parks Department, and I think that Dan alluded to this, with very scarce resources, has been nothing less than spectacular. And this is, I want this conversation hopefully to end on a very positive note and an appreciation for all the work they've done, and look forward to Nicole doing this in the future, and thanking Susan for all she's done in the past up to this point. So thank you, Mayor. That concludes my report.
Yes, I 100% agree. Nicole, you've done an excellent job, and Susan, you left it in good hands, and we really appreciate that as a city. With that, would I have the Deputy City Clerk read the consent agenda?
Item 1, approval of vouchers. Item 2, Lodging Tax Advisory Committee appointment. Item 3, 2022 Overlay Program, Public Works Construction Contract Award, and 2022 to 2023 On-Call Consultant Agreement for Consultant Administration and Inspection Services. Item 4, Des Moines Memorial Drive, South 208th Street to South 212th Street Pipe Project, 2022 to 2023 Consultant On-Call Agreement for Engineering Services. Item 5, North Fork McSorley Creek Diversion Project, Public Works Construction Contract Award, and 2022 to 2023 On-Call Consultant Agreement for Construction Administration and Inspection Services. Item 6, 24th Avenue South Improvement Projects, Kent Des Moines Road, SR 516 to South 223rd Street, 2022 to 2023 On-Call General Civil Engineer Services Parametrics Task Assignment 2022-02 for right-of-way acquisition services. Item 7, 1 Washington Memorandum of Understanding, and that concludes the consent calendar, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Nutting.
I move to approve the consent calendar as read.
Do I have a second? I see Councilmember Pennington is seconding it. Is there any council member that wishes to pull an item? Councilmember Harris.
Item 4, please.
Item 4, okay. Is there any other, Councilmember Oxiger, I see your hand.
Yes, I'd like to pull item 2.
Okay. Is there any other items that any council member wishes to pull? Seeing none, we will be approving for the consent agenda, item 1, item 3, item 5, and it's 3 motions, and item 6, and it's 2 motions, and item 7. With that, with those items, all those in favor of approving those on the consent agenda, please raise your right hand. I see all 7 council members, therefore it passes unanimously. So we will go to items 2 and 4. We will start in order of numerically, if you don't mind. And I'm going to open the floor to Councilman Oxiger on item 2 on the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee appointment.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just would like a little clarification that by rules, the 2 of the positions are supposed to be on this committee are supposed to be from entities that are collecting the tax. And I believe now that both of those positions are being held, will be held, if we approve this appointment, will be held by employees of the same business. Could I get an explanation of the logic?
That is correct. City Attorney George, do you want to address this, or shall I?
Well, that's correct. It's not prohibited that they be from different entities. Yeah, that's correct.
I'll elaborate a little bit more. Primarily, nearly, I think it's well over, I believe, 95% of the tax collected is from this hotel. There's specific requirements that do it. We have historically used them. They've both had both appointments in the past. Should we get a hotel of that nature in the future, they would most likely usurp one of those seats for one of the seats. But right now, they're the ones that are the major driver in the funds that we generate. And in my determination, I felt that was appropriate that both be on, as we had done historically. Councilmember Nutting, and then I see Councilmember Harris.
Move to confirm the mayoral appointment of Emmie Crespo to the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee effectively immediately.
Well, let's hold on the motion for just a second. Councilmember Harris, did you have a comment or question before?
I do, Mayor. I just, at our strategy session, this was one of those process things that should be addressed. All the committees, their work product, they should generate minutes, and there should be a public facing list of
Councilmember Harris, at this point, it is a mayoral appointment. When we go to council rules in that process, then you can address it then. But
no. I am addressing the
sir. But my point is do you have a point? Do you have a point to the appointment itself?
Yeah, I believe that Councilmember Oxiger's concerns are because it is an opaque process, and simply reverting to the process we had up until the mid-2000s would alleviate a lot of this questioning and
then Councilmember Harris, when we do council rules,
how these things are handled.
Yeah, then Councilmember Harris, when we visit those rules, you can address that. Councilmember Steinmetz.
Well, actually, yeah, I was going to bring a point of order that this isn't germane to this particular appointment. I think the issue here is whether this individual is going to, whether this appointment is going to be approved by the council or not. I think she's well qualified. She well represents exactly what the intent was. And she works for essentially a business that accounts for over 90% of the tax that is collected. And so it seems particularly appropriate that they have representation, even if it is two different representatives on that particular board or advisory committee. So I think that's the issue.
Yep. Thank you for the clarification. Is there any other comments or questions before I entertain Councilmember Nutting's motion? Seeing none, do I have a second for the motion? I see Councilmember Steinmetz. With that, let's go ahead and take a vote on the item. Lodging Tax Advisory Committee appointment of Emmie Crespo. All those in favor, raise your right hand. I see Councilmember Steinmetz. I see Deputy Mayor Buxton, Councilmember Pennington, Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Oxiger, Councilmember Nutting, and myself. The vote passes 7-0. Thank you. And moving on to item 4, I open the floor to Councilmember Harris, who pulled the item.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a couple of questions about it. If I don't know if Andrew or the engineer Ben is available. I noted that there is now, there seems to be a common term of art, a 25-year event. is that a federal requirement or part of NPDES now? And is that the minimum, for all these types of projects?
Yes, this is Andrew Merges, Public Works Director. In general, the King County Surface Water Design Manual helps guide the city on what storm events we design to.
Okay, I mean, is it a legal requirement, or you're saying it's their manual of best practice?
It depends. There's two things. One, there could be requirements from King County, and then there's best engineering practices from an industry-wide perspective of what storm events apply to certain systems.
Okay, I'm just, that area, because of the, as the geology, it's this hill. And I recall, many years ago, I believe Senator Kaiser, there was talk of doing something in terms of stabilization of the hillside in that area. And I guess my question is a 25-year event adequate? I mean, that may be the minimum, but I'm just noticing that these 100-year events seem to happen every so often.
This project design addresses the fact that the existing ditches and culverts in this section of roadway cannot handle a 25-year event. So the project is going to propose bringing that up to a higher storm event standard.
Will that have any, are there any ongoing concerns of the city about the hillsides, going up to the flagpole along that west side? Is that something that will be addressed or mitigated by this project?
Well, this project in general will get rid of roadside ditch lines and convey the water so it doesn't pool. So there will be an indirect effect of, some hillside stabilization. But in general, hillside stabilization, we look at that, if we see problems or if we see slope creep, things of that nature. This project hasn't identified a geotechnical structural stability issue that we have to mitigate. But like I said, it will get rid of some of the surface water that stands, which indirectly helps dry out the soil.
Yeah, no, I'm just recalling that there was, at one point, there was talk of something holistic, basically redoing that entire area, both the hillside and the culvert and so on. Thank you.
Councilmember Nutting.
I move to approve task order assignment 202201 with Preteet Inc. that will provide design and permitting services for the Des Moines Memorial Drive 208th Street to South 212th Street pipe project in the amount of $184,317 and authorize the city manager to sign said task order assignment substantially in the form as submitted.
Deputy Mayor Buxton.
Second.
Okay. Is there any further discussion before I take the vote? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. I see Councilmember Steinmetz, Deputy Mayor Buxton, Councilmember Pennington, Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Oxiger, Councilmember Nutting, and myself. Vote passes 7-0. All right. Moving on to new business. We have the second reading of the council time change. Do I have, I'm going to start out with a
Point of order,
motion.
Mayor.
Go ahead.
Were we going to entertain items for future consideration?
That would, that in the order it is, we're going to take care of the new business, then we'll do the new items for future consideration.
Thank you.
So we're handling the new business first. With that, do I have a motion on the table for regarding the start time for the city council? I see Councilmember Nutting.
I don't have the motion in front of me. It wasn't printed in the packet, but I move to pass the draft ordinance as read.
So just for clarification, I actually have it here. I move to adopt draft ordinance number 22-023 to change the official start time of the city council meeting to 6 p.m. is just for
Correct,
clarification, and I see Deputy Mayor Buxton. Are you seconding it? Okay, with the second, do we have discussion? Councilmember Harris, you have the floor.
There we go. Thank you, Mayor. So, I was struck by the fact that the council voted to do research on the start times. And I think that the start times of other cities are irrelevant. I think of this as being a public meeting of the city council. And so in evaluating this, I looked at two things. Would changing the start time improve the functioning of the city council? And no. And if changing it, would it improve public engagement? Because if that were the case, I'd hold, if I thought you could get more people engaged, I'd show up at Sunday 2 a.m. But since no other city felt a need even to change their start times during the pandemic, let alone change them back, I don't see any benefit to either the council or the public. And I think, frankly, with all due respect to our wonderful staff, this is like basically doing something that the staff find more convenient, but not necessarily the public. And I apologize for however that comes across, but this doesn't benefit either the council or the public. And I just even bringing it forward, if I had heard that council members really had proposed it, I would take it more seriously. And so I will vote no. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Steinmetz.
Yeah, I am surprised that you're not seeing the benefit of that, Councilmember Harris. Those of us that have to work obviously have a very difficult time showing up for anything at 5 o'clock, and we have to take time out of our work day in order to get there. If you move this back to 6 or 7, then you can actually have the idea that we have, citizens who are working who can also serve on the council. It's great for people who are retired that you have a lot of more time, but not everybody does, and that's not the way the whole representation piece, is ideally going to work. So I think moving it back to 6 is a decent compromise. I can tell you that I was a regular attendee for the 7 o'clock meetings, and about 10 o'clock I was zoning out, and I think that argues in favor of having a more productive council meeting if you can start it at 6 instead of 7 o'clock. And then lastly, I do think it is more convenient to the staff, and I think that is important. We ask our staff to do a lot, and the longer and later we keep them, the harder it is and the more we're taking away from them. We want to have the best staff around. We want them to enjoy working here. I think that is a piece worth taking into consideration. And then lastly, everybody that works for a living. Well, no, that's way too broad a statement. A lot of people that work for a living, they get off at 5, they could make a 6 o'clock council meeting if they want to participate in this. It does make it more available than trying to get on a Zoom call at 5, or I think trying to get here by 7 o'clock. Because if you've got any kind of a family by 7 o'clock, you're probably engaged with them and, oh yeah, I forgot to go to the council meeting that I wanted to go to. I just think 6 o'clock is a good time. I think the information that we got from other cities suggests that there are some other cities that think it's a good time as well, not all of them. But I think, and also, I'm not sure that we heard any complaints one way or another. I didn't receive any feedback about what the community wants. So to that extent, I think it's worth trying. We could certainly adjust this later if there's a problem with it, but I don't think there's going to be a problem with it. And it does increase the ability of the public to attend the meetings, because simply a lot of people work a 9-to-5 job and it makes it available to them. And so the potential is there. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Buxton.
Thank you, Mayor. I am only going to address one component of what has been brought out, and that is the staff component here. We are one branch of this government. The staff is the executive branch. We're the policy-making legislative branch. It is a branch. 1/3, if you call it judicial, executive, legislative, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. We have this meeting, and we have 1/3 of the responsibility in making this organism move forward, be healthy, get the job done. If we do not consider our staff, we could sit here for 8 hours a day making policy with nobody to enact it. It is very important to represent the voice of the community. I am pulled deeply by the voice of the community, but to not be pulled at all by the voice of the staff is folly. And if we feel like we have any responsibility at all, we exist. I'm sorry, I'm on the fly with this. I did not expect that kind of statement about this issue. If we expect our policy to be carried out, if we feel like we have any responsibility at all, I have heard one of my colleagues talk about the responsibility of oversight, which I don't feel that we have. But if I want to appeal to the person who does believe that, oversight of what? These are people. We are people. I'm an elected, but I'm not a machine. I'm a people. I'm a person. This staff, they are people. They have families. They live in cities that they care about too. A lot of them live in this one. They're working hard to conduct the policy that we make. It is compassionate. It's reasonable. It's good management to listen to the people who are supposed to conduct the business that you design. And so I'm happy with 6. I'm happy with 5. My schedule will be flexible no matter what. If we start at 8, I'll be there happily. But I think 6 is a great time. I could have brought it up myself. So I'm going to be voting on that. I want to make a big point, though, just to reiterate it one more time, how essential a city staff is, and they are not machines. And if we want to have a happily producing group of people to carry out the policy we make and to keep them there, and those that think well, do well, work hard, and are happy about it, we do well as good policymakers to listen to anything they have to say about conducting their work. Thank you.
Thank you. Before your second round, Councilmember Harris, I will add that we did receive no comments. That in the past we were 5 o'clock or 7 o'clock. We moved to 5 when the Zoom meetings, and seem to incorporate 6. I believe is a good compromise. I don't need to even say any more than the staff, as 2 of our colleagues have eloquently put. And I will say this: is we've had a few meetings that go 4 hours. We start at 6, it's 10. It's not going to extend out to another meeting or put us into the wee hours of the night. It is a good compromise and a good time to have this meeting. With that, is there anybody else that has comments before Councilmember Harris goes? Councilmember Pennington.
Yeah, I agree with my counterparts. This is a good time, and again, we haven't heard any feedback from the public, and staff. The staff, the work they do carries this council, because they're the ones that carry the water, and so if this helps them, and it helps them in both professionally and personally, at their home life and that. Then I'm in favor of it. It's the right thing to do. It's an hour shift, and it's just simply the right thing to do to look out for our staff and for them, and ultimately that pays back into the work that they do and the commitment that they have. So they're committed to the city and to moving it forward and working, we should be equally as committed to them. So I'm in favor of this change.
All right, thank you. Going back to Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sort of bemused. I thought it was going to be a given that we would go back to 7 because no other city shifted to 5 to begin with. There's this idea of, I was trying to think of the state or county or any other legislature basically altering their rules in order to curry the favor of the governor or Dow Constantine or what have you, the convenience of another legislative branch. If anything, if we had done any kind of research, a professional web team could determine what time of day would improve public engagement. That would be research I would want to have, because there are so few people who participate. And in my opinion, our primary motivation should be getting more of the public involved. That's the research I would want to have had, but this is where it is. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Harris. Is there any other comments before I take a vote? Oh, Councilmember Oxiger.
I would just, I understand the concerns about, the lateness of the hour and, accommodating staff and all of that. But I would also point out that one of the biggest barriers to young families participating is that 6 o'clock is the time for, the deadline for picking up your kids from daycare. And with the commute time out of Seattle for a lot of these parents and everything, 6 o'clock is a very difficult time for them to meet. So, I think a compromise of 6:30 might be more appropriate.
Are you making a motion to amend it to 6:30?
Sure.
No, I would second that.
Do we have a second?
Yes, sir.
Well, is there any discussion before I take a vote? Seeing none, all those in favor of amending it to 6:30, raise your right hand. I see Councilmember Harris and I see Councilmember Oxiger. All those opposed? I see Councilmember Steinmetz, Deputy Mayor Buxton, Councilmember Pennington, Councilmember Nutting, and myself. It falls 2-5. With that, let's go on to the vote of the motion to change the city council meeting time to 6 p.m. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Councilmember Steinmetz, Deputy Mayor Buxton, Councilmember Pennington, Councilmember Nutting, and myself. All those opposed? Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Oxiger, vote passes. Your time, and now moving on to new items for future consideration. We will move on to this. This is for the sole purpose of proposing new business items that have not previously been before the council for discussion on a future agenda. This is not a time for questions about old business. Council members can submit questions or seek updates on previously discussed businesses to the city manager at any time. Do any council members have a new business they would like to propose?
Sure.
I see Councilmember Harris.
Yeah, so thank you, Mayor. As I said before, it would be just, the city manager said some very interesting things about where we're at with the fireworks. And I think it would just be a comfort to both the public and the council to get that in writing where we're at. So if there are any points of friction, we can, iron them out while there's plenty of time.
So Councilmember Harris, what I understand you doing proposing is getting I would say it's an update on the partnership between the organizations that put on the events and the city participation.
Sure.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Buxton.
Thank you, Mayor. I would be in favor of that as well. I think even on the public safety agenda coming up, we are going to have one of the items is a discussion of summer events, and to just get a foreshadowing of what's going to be going on this summer and include a lot of things in the community. So it might fit in fine for the city manager to give us an update somewhere around the same time. So
I'm going to go to Council Member or City Manager Matthias, then I'll go to you, Council Member Oxiger.
Thank you, Mayor. So I guess one of the things that needs to be considered, and it's a really important point, what's going on with the fireworks. In that instance, the city is responsible for issuing a special events permit. And that special events permit has to take into account safety, security, crowd control, emergency access, working with our first responders. That's a regulatory requirement we have prior to events being held in the city. Okay, in the instance of the fireworks specifically, the representative from Destination Des Moines felt that the requirements in special event permit were both ludicrous and were put in there to design the event to fail. Okay, nothing could be further from the truth. And one thing I'm proud of in the decision for us to participate to the degree we are perfectly willing to submit ourselves to their requirements in the special events permit that we were going to issue to another party. We will live up to those. They're the right common sense, regulatory, safety things to do. So until we get the application for a special events permit, I'm not in a position to comment on what that relationship will be or won't be in the future, depending on what the event is. When we receive that, we can review it, we can work with whoever submitted it and see if we can come to an agreement as to what the requirements will be. So I am hesitant to speak on behalf of any organization other than the city's regulatory requirements until the point at which there is a special events permit or not, and a decision does finally get made about holding an event or not. So an update, it's difficult only because we have regulatory requirements, and then there's whatever the relationship is going to be with whatever party at whatever point for whatever event. So I'm hesitant you can ask us to proceed and we'll give you the bare minimum probably of what goes in a special events permit, and our organization's willing to meet those requirements.
Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Harris.
Just hit the thing.
No, you are out of order, sir. You are out of order. Councilman, are you finished, City Manager Matthias?
I am.
Okay, then I'm going to yield the floor to Councilmember Oxiger.
Okay, I guess I'm a little bit confused. Was Councilmember Harris trying to make a point of order, or was he just making a comment? Because the point of order would be,
he was making a comment, but it was out of order. I ruled it out of order. You have the floor to make your comment, sir.
Since I am the person initiating the motion,
no, sir, sir, you are not. You may have initiated it, but I'm running the meeting here, and you are out of order. The floor is Councilmember Oxiger's at this point. Thank you.
Okay. I will speak in favor of this being brought before the council. Again, there needs to be, I believe, some clarification as to, how volunteer organizations are going to be dealt with, and, what responsibilities the city is taking over. I think in particular with the case of the fireworks over Des Moines, that the city has an obligation to see that this event gets put on, because back in 2005, I believe, when the prohibition of fireworks in the city was passed, that the argument by both the fire department and the city was that those people who were complaining about the prohibition of fireworks, that this was the alternative, a public event that could be supervised and run safely. And if there's a question now as to whether or not we're going to be able to produce, because with what City Manager Matthias has indicated is, is this going to go forward if there is not a funding source? So, I think
So hold on. So here's the thing about this meeting is if we just have 3 in favor, we can move forward with it, which is what I seem to be getting the indication of. But to City Manager Matthias's point, only the items that have had a permit submitted, would he be willing to comment on what the interaction would be? This is what we're after here. Now we can all wax poetically about what we think in this regard, but what we want is the information from the city manager about what the city is going to do in the active participation and partnership with these organizations, including the volunteers, et cetera. Do I have that correct?
My understanding though is that a request for a permit has been submitted. It has been returned for
Point of order.
Additional information.
Yeah. Point of order. So the point is that we have three council members that support it. So we'll have the city manager respond.
No. You don't, if you think that you have mine, I need clarity on what I'm voting on.
So okay, it was the indication that you'd given your support to this.
This is not, okay, I'm not sure what this is anymore. So that's what I need clarity on.
So
what is happening? Okay, here's my point of order. I made a point of order.
Okay.
This is turning into a conversation about something else that should either be referred to committee or discussed in a different situation. I understood that what was being brought forward is a briefing on summer events. Now you just clarified that briefing could only include things that the city had given permits on, which I would vote in favor of. Correct. I am not voting in favor of a discussion about why or why not community organizations can or cannot get permits. I am not in favor of that discussion.
Yes, Deputy Mayor, absolutely. I think what the consensus here is that you support what exactly I said. So there's about 4 of us that support that right now.
No. I, as the initiator of this, so I just have a little bit of clarification.
So what is it for the clarification?
Are you saying that a permit application has not been received by the city? That's all I want. That's what I thought I heard you say.
Yeah, what it's going to be, the clarification as city manager elaborated with the issue is to speak on those and what the components are in the partnership.
Has the city received an application for a permit to hold an event for fireworks over the marina?
Point of order. That is not.
Why is that not germane to this discussion?
So I'm going to move this meeting along. The fact is that we'll receive an update from the city manager at the next council meeting, if that's acceptable, which would be June 9th, on the events in the summer. Thank you.
Well, wait. Okay, I have a point though.
I withdraw the whole. I withdraw. Yeah. So you go.
Thank you,
Mayor. Do what you want, man.
Mr. Mayor.
No, Councilmember Oxiger, we're moving on to new business, unless you have another new item on business.
Well, there's a procedural point here because if I understand it correctly, if we wait on the approval of a permit for fireworks, that would have to come at the June 9th meeting, which is within the 30-day window that's required.
That's
I'll just add, Mayor, permits are administrative. The council doesn't make decisions on permits.
Exactly. We get an update on June 9th. That's what we're going to get out of this meeting. We're moving on. Unless you have other new business separate from this, we're going to move on to board and committee reports. Seeing that, Councilmember Oxiger, you have the floor.
I've already spoken.
Okay, thank you. Next, Councilmember Nutting.
Thank you. The Environment Committee met this afternoon and received just a high-level overview of the NPDES permit. the program overview. There's a full committee update on the watershed planned for June. Some of the takeaways were that Stormfest, although the last couple of years haven't been able to be held, this year they'll be able to bring it to the schools. There are 8 things that we have to abide by, and leading into the second one was a source control program update. Was a new add to what we have to abide by for our permit, and they'll be bringing several resolutions to council, 2 on hopefully August 1st and the 3rd on January 1st, 2023. And then we received a CI. Lost my notes here. We received a CIP update, and several of the projects are closing out, and they're going out for grant funding on several of the other projects, and the Mazzy Creek as part of the Wyra 9 salmon recovery, and we received a $365,000 grant for that project. Those were just some of the highlights, and that concludes my remarks.
All right, moving on to Councilmember Harris.
Let's see here. Just want to make sure. Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Well, first of all, I wanted to give a quick shout out to Sharice and Nani and Rochelle at the Senior Center. They don't get enough credit for the effort that they've put in during the last couple of years. There is going to be a holy festival on Saturday, and I hope that everyone will attend. To my memory, this is perhaps the first multicultural kind of event of its type in many, many years. And I just wanted to highlight that just out of the blue, it occurred to me, Destination Des Moines has flipped to being a majority women board. And these are younger, very capable, passionate people who are going to put a lot of energy and new ideas into the organization. And I look forward to many more such events like this. I hope everyone will attend from noon to 5. I attended the interviews for the position 5 Highline School Board director slot. It's one of the most important jobs that nobody seems to get engaged with. I was like the only person in the room, which is kind of surreal given the gravity. I can just say that there were 3 applicants from Des Moines, and I think any of the 3 would serve ably. But it's just something we take for granted, perhaps, but the synergy between the city and the school district, cannot be overestimated. That's why I was there. I also attended the Port of Seattle Commission meeting to support the attempts by the city of SeaTac to obtain permanent ownership of North SeaTac Park. And I picked that particular meeting because it was a combo plate. They ended the ACE grant program, and there is a sale. There's this ongoing sale of all these little bits of what's called surplus SR 509 property. And you can see this in just this meeting, how everybody can do the right things and still things end up bad for the community writ large. The commissioners want to plant more trees and help the environment, and they, do things like the Greener Cities Partnership, but they do not realize the massive impact of SR 509 because they're all set aside into separate buckets. And so I show up to try to say, look, if you sell off that thing, you better save North SeaTac Park, or else you'll never be able to restore tree canopy. At some point, you have to set aside land. And I think the commissioners, the new commission is much more sensitive to that kind of thing. And on the 23rd, WashDOT will publish a video showing what SR 509 Stage 2 is going to look like. And it is going to be a slice for everyone who lives in North Hill and anywhere along Des Moines Memorial Drive. That's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Harris. Moving on to Councilmember Pennington.
Thank you. I attended the environmental committee meeting this evening, and you got the update from the chair, Councilmember Nutting. I didn't get to make a comment about the Parks and Rec, and I just wanted to say thank you to both Susan and Nicole and the work that they're doing. They're in a really difficult spot. We're, as we all know, we're in a post-COVID world and trying to figure out the new normal, and I think they're doing a heck of a job at what's been handed to them. And it's interesting that the summer jobs. I saw a report that the Seattle area or Washington, people are not wanting to go back to the offices and going back to work, and as opposed to the rest of the country. It's a little bit of the abnormal up here, but anyway, they've done a heck of a job, and I appreciate it. I look forward to what is going to come forward in the future, and the new paths that they're going to have to go down and figure all this stuff out. And I feel very comfortable that with their leadership and their staff that will be of a Parks and Rec program that is going to be what we would expect. And so thank you for that. I have to tell you, kind of an interesting conversation, that last one. I think there's a lot of passion, and there's a lot of personal agendas, and there's a lot of other underlying currents that need to get flushed out and need to get straightened out. If we want to do anything that has any semblance of public good and bringing community together and having these types of public display of discontent with things and personal agendas is not the way to do it. But I think our staff is trying to move forward. They're trying to move forward with different organizations and making things successful. And we just had a 2-year hiatus of things. And so again, trying to move forward, trying to be successful. And my support is with our staff and with the work that they're doing, and getting our community back into a sense of community where people feel safe to gather and feel safe to interact, and as we go forward for everybody. And so anyway, with that's really my comments that I have for this evening. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Pennington. Moving on to Councilmember Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't have any committee meetings this week to report on, but I'd like to point out that we have 2 new businesses that opened here in Des Moines. Anchor Coffee, which is in the old Marine View Espresso, and Alberto Jr., which is looks like a Mexican restaurant at Taqueria. And it is trying to describe where it is. It's in the little stand over in the Dollar Tree parking lot at the south end of that parking lot. I looked at their menus. Looks like they have lots of good stuff. I haven't been there yet because I haven't been able to go when they were open, but we have 2 new businesses, and that's great. I encourage everybody to check them out. Secondly is that Saturday is opening day of boating. And I think the mayor will be reading our proclamation down at the yacht club in the afternoon. And I know the yacht club is also doing a 50s dance, since it's their 50th anniversary in the yacht club itself. And so tickets are available if you want to talk to the yacht club about that. But kind of fun community type events. And I'd like to echo a lot of what Councilmember Pennington just said. The community events are what makes this a community. And we can't let other people, personal viewpoints and things get in the way. We need to, this needs to be a can-do attitude from everybody involved. Figure it out. We'll get it worked out. I think there are ways to get everything done. And I'm glad to see, at least my understanding is the fireworks are moving forward. At least that's what I heard tonight, in a partnership in a way that's going to make some rational sense. We can't ask volunteer organizations to do things they can't do because they're really not equipped to do that. That's the only point about volunteers. And anyway, I'm not going to go on because I don't really want to rehash it all. The point being, we need this community to come together and work together and bring off these big community events that build our community and make us one place. And that's really a pretty cool city that we are. Thank you very much.
Agreed. Thank you, Councilmember Steinmetz. Moving on to Deputy Mayor Buxton.
Thank you, Mayor. This last Saturday, I attended a delightful event out at Mary Gay Park. It was an educational experience. It was conducted by an amazing coalition of several organizations. Puget Sound Keepers, Forterra was a partner, a fabulous organization run by Terrell Dorsey called Unleash the Brilliance, and these young people that came with him. That was the core of the event, is these young people. Des Moines Parks assisted in helping clear some area there and trail. International Rescue Community. And what they did is they came together to have an educational experience on water quality. They did water quality testing. They cleaned up in the park. They picked up, it was a whole about making sure that when the water flows through anywhere, that it flows through clean places and into clean places and is clean when it goes into the sound. And it was a fabulous experience. I loved meeting these young people, and I appreciate all of these organizations partnering together. So I appreciated our ability to host the event in our city in Mary Gay Park. In addition, I attended the Dollars for Scholars event last night. A big hearty handful of young people, incredible young people, gathered together to receive scholarships through this Dollars for Scholars organization. These young people are our future aerospace engineers, civil rights attorneys, teachers, software engineers. One of the young men that was there was creating, he went into his parents put him in a coding class when he was 11 and started creating apps. He's created several apps all through his teen years. I attended the event with the mayor and Sergeant Kripe and Sergeant Helmgren, and we were there to facilitate a scholarship in the name of Stephen J. Underwood for a person who is an up-and-coming community servant. And our young person that we were able to gift this scholarship to was Caitlin Brandon. And she's one of the, she wants to be a civil rights attorney, and she has a long-term vision to be nominated as a Supreme Court justice. And I thought, you go girl, you've got a big vision, you go to it. And it was such an honor and pleasure to be around all these young people who had these big visions for our future and the communities that they wanted to serve. So that was a great pleasure. And then I'll let the mayor add anything else about that he'd like to. So thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I also was impressed with the future students we have. I mean, they at 18, my resume didn't look like these guys. They were very impressive, each and every one of them. Really quick, I want to say this, that when we come to new business, what I would ask any council members to do if you want to propose something is be concise, be pointed on what you want. It's not about an argument for it or that. The whole purpose of that is to get it on a future agenda, have staff look at it, et cetera. So I would ask that we do that as we move forward. I can't, as the mayor and the presiding officer, allow for agendas and so forth. And you need to understand my job is to run a meeting as efficiently as I can. And when it gets off track, it's my obligation to interject, and I will, as you've seen. With that being said, I chaired the Transportation Committee tonight. We reviewed the Transportation Improvement Plan in detail with council members Buxton and Oxiger. It was a good discussion. We looked at all the future projects, what are the priorities and so forth. And we also got some updates on our capital project updates. As Councilmember Steinmetz had mentioned, opening day of boating season is Saturday, May 14th from 2 to 4 at the Yacht Club. We will be reading the proclamation, and we are excited for boating to get back to what it was a couple years ago. I also want to remind folks that on May 17th at 4 p.m. at Highline College, they will be celebrating their 60th anniversary. And hopefully a few of you can make it up there and enjoy that as well. With that being said, the next meeting we will have is on June 9th in public from the dais at 6 p.m. for a regular meeting of the Des Moines City Council. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
No. Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Oxiger, you'd be out of order, so I'm taking.
Excuse me. I was not allowed to make my comment.
When I listed you first, you said that you had said all you needed to say.
No.
Yes, you did, sir.
No, we were talking about putting things on the agenda.
Sir, we moved on to new business.
Reports and comments.
Sir, we moved on to new business, and now we're at the end of the meeting. I was clear about that.
No, I'm sorry you weren't. It's
yes, I was
talking about a different issue. I have a report.
Councilmember Steinmetz.
Yeah, just a point of order. There clearly has been some miscommunication and confusion here. I have no objection to ceding some time to council.
That's what I'm looking for. Is Deputy Mayor Buxton.
Make that motion.
So I see a council. Okay, therefore, I apologize for the miscommunication. I took it as your new business. I will give you the floor before adjournment. There you have your 4 minutes. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. First of all, I have no committee reports. I do want to make note, though, of an event that's coming up on June 22nd, which is the 71st anniversary of the Men in Black, the reporting of the Maury Island incident. And there's going to be a presentation and celebration at the quarterdeck, and tickets are on sale now. And this is being put on by Steve Edmondson, and it's an opportunity, I think, for us to capitalize on a historic event here in Des Moines that could, have some value as far as attracting people to our town. So I thank you for, allowing me to have a council comment. And I'm done.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Oxiger. And I apologize. I'd taken your word that we were moving on. So it was a misunderstanding on both our parts. With that, do I have a motion to adjourn? Councilmember Nutting. So moved. Do I have a second? With that being said, all those in favor, raise your right hand. We will see you all on